We're pleased to have here Slava Rubin, the co-founder and chief business officer and formerly CEO of Indiegogo. And his moderator is Daniil, Stolyarov, investment director at Almaz Capital. So Indiegogo is a crowdfunding platform that empowers people around the world to fund projects that matter to them. The company was funded by such investors as Kleiner Perkins, Insight, IDG, IVP, Khosla Ventures, so top venture capital funds. Over $1.2 billion was raised on the platform. Users from 233 countries and territories are using this platform, and over 740,000 campaigns were launched. Daniil Stolyarov is the investment director at Almaz Capital. Daniil focuses on helping companies successfully grow their operations and organizations across the borders, United States and Europe. Previously, Daniil worked at Cowen & Company, Lehman Brothers, and Renaissance Capital.
So it looks like Anna did a good job of introducing both of us. What I would like to do is maybe mention some of the very impressive stats that everybody knows.
Can you guys hear us? Yeah, okay.
I think everybody knows Indiegogo. I think many of you in the audience have actually used it. And I'm talking about entrepreneurs who used it to fund their various new product ideas. I just like the very impressive numbers that there are over $1.2 billion raised on the platform to date. There have been 8.5 million backers who actually contribute to the various funding campaigns. The company got users from 233 countries. A truly international story. And so far to date, the company has seen 740 million campaigns funded. And that's for a company that is how old, Slava?
9 years old.
9 years old. I think these are very impressive numbers.
Woo! Just the fact that we're alive 9 years later is impressive.
So Slava, let me start with a question to you as an entrepreneur. And we have a lot of entrepreneurs in the crowd, and I'm sure they can relate to that. How did Indiegogo start? We, as venture capitalists, we like to think of entrepreneurs as those who kind of set out to solve a problem of some kind. What was the problem that you saw and decided to solve with Indiegogo?
Yeah, so my two co-founders and I, we came up with the idea for Indiegogo a long time ago, 2006. It was the fall, and I had already had a very good friend. His name was Eric. He went to go get his MBA at Haas. He met Danae. And the three of us were sharing dinner. And in business school, often people try to come up with companies so they can spend their time in business school to work on those companies. So Eric said, Danae has an idea. I want to hear your thoughts. So Danae was an investment banker for 5 years, and she'd always been the gatekeeper for the money. And she wanted to go to business school to try to create a mutual fund where the people that would invest in the mutual fund will get to vote on how the mutual fund would get allocated, which is a pretty good idea. And she said, what do you think of that? And I said, if you're going to change the finance industry, you can't do it in the finance industry. And she said, no, I want to create a mutual fund where the people that, I said, yes, if you want to change the finance industry, you can't do it in the finance industry. And she said, I don't think you understand what I'm saying. I want to create a mutual fund where, I'm like, I got it. If you want to change the finance industry, you can't do it in the finance industry. And she said to Eric, because it's the first time we'd ever met, and she said, Eric, I thought you said this guy's pretty smart. And Eric looks at me, thinking like, what's going on here? What do you think? I said, Danae, have you heard of YouTube? Now, it's easy to say right now that you know YouTube, but I bet you 90% of you did not use YouTube in 2006. So I said to her, it's not owned by Google yet. So I said to her, do you know YouTube? And she says, no, I don't know what you're talking about. I said, YouTube is pretty interesting. People post content, anybody who wants to, and then other people, anybody that wants to, can watch it. She said, I don't really get it. So I showed it to her, and I showed a video. She said, well, who posts these videos? I said, anybody. Well, who watches these videos? Anybody. Well, how do people decide to actually watch one of these videos? And I said, well, it starts by the people who create the videos share it with their networks. And if it's interesting, they'll share it with other people. And before you know it, YouTube will decide what is the most interesting for the market to watch. She said, that's really cool. I'm like, you want YouTube for money? She said, yes, that's exactly what I want. So we created Indiegogo.
Usually the first 2 years are the years of various trials and pivots and experiments and ways to figure out, product market fit, traction, whether you have the right solution, whether you have the right growth engine in place. What were the first few years like? What were the challenges that you faced as you were trying to figure out what you actually do and how you do it?
Yeah, so we'll talk about raising money in a second, but the first 2 years were really hard. I had a magical plan. That plan went right out the window. I don't know if you know the Mike Tyson story, so I'll just give you a commercial break here for a second, which is, Mike Tyson used to be a great boxer, and he was undefeated. And Michael Spinks was also undefeated. And everybody said Michael Spinks was going to be the guy that was going to beat Mike Tyson. So it took months, huge media attention, everybody was following. And then finally, there was the Michael Spinks versus Mike Tyson fight. And 91 seconds later, Mike Tyson knocked out Michael Spinks. Out. First round, 91 seconds. So HBO, who used to run the boxing, goes up and says, Michael Spinks, what do you think? You had this great plan. Everybody talked about you were going to be the guy that defeats him. What happened? He's like, I don't know. Mike Tyson's pretty great. I don't know. That sucked. And then they go to Mike Tyson, and they say, Mike, everybody was talking about Michael Spinks, how this was going to be the guy to beat you. This was going to be the guy that understood what to do. He had an awesome plan. What do you think? And Mike Tyson says, everybody's got a plan until I punch him in the face. Everybody's got a plan until I punch them in the face. Which is, I had a great plan too. I knew how I was going to launch. I knew what Q1 was going to be like. I knew I was going to get case studies. I knew I was going to get press after that. And then the market crashed in the fall of 2008. We got punched so hard, it was terrible. We didn't have enough money to stay open. We just figured out how to bootstrap. I could tell you the fundraising story after that. But we had to really figure out product market fit. People still come up to me right now and they say, what would be good on Indiegogo? I like that I could get money, but I want coworkers. I want to get recruiting. Or I want people to vouch for my products. Or I want people to give reviews. Or I want people to do all this. You want to hear something crazy, crazy. Day one, Indiegogo, January 2008, I had every single one of those features already built. Every single one. See, because I was brilliant. I was so much smarter than everybody else. What everybody else didn't understand is they were going to come to my site for money, but then they were going to get caught into every single one of these features of all this incredible experience, my web of experience. But actually what I found out is people had no idea what was the CTA, what was the call to action. Very clear. I like to call it the octopus approach. People that do not know what they are doing and that have a lot of opinions will always use the octopus approach, which is an octopus, if you have a cellophane piece of plastic, right, cellophane wrapper, an octopus will have 8 equal tentacles, and it will try to break through that cellophane. But because it has equal distribution of weight across the cellophane will continue to move, and it will never break, right? But if you take a tiny little ant with a tiny little knife that just walks straight, it will break immediately. But what happens is we are too smart for ourselves, including me. So we ended up, after about a year, taking out every single feature, except for, guess what? The fund button. Exactly. And what do we do well now? Funding. And we had to learn that, though, for over like 2.5 years.
For a company that set out to make funding easy for entrepreneurs, was that easy for you to get funded? What was your financing story?
No, what really should have existed is Indiegogo for Indiegogo. So then we could have raised on Indiegogo. It's like a Christopher Nolan movie. It's quite meta. No, it sucked. So we bootstrapped our own money. We had enough money for just 3 quarters until Q3 2008. We were totally planning on raising in Q3 2008. I already had investors that wanted to invest before we launched in 2007 because they started hearing rumors about this idea. We passed on all the investors because I wanted to have better terms, better leverage. Yeah, that was a terrible plan because it didn't work. We got punched in the face. We somehow bootstrapped our own money through another 2.5 years. We used to not eat a lot. I used to be thinner. I could have used Star City as well because I couldn't afford housing. Danae lived with her mother. But to tell you the truth, we got rejected by 93 VCs in a row. 93. 93. And now we have John Doerr from Kleiner Perkins, Vinod Khosla from Khosla Ventures, Richard Branson, the Partovi brothers, Keith Raboy, Max Levchin, who created PayPal. Like, it's hard to find like a better, we have IVP, we have Inside Venture Partners, these are billion-dollar funds. You just got to believe. Either you are going to be the one person who will continue to move forward. No one will help you. The people that tell you have a good idea are your mother and your sister. And the people you tell you have a bad idea are all the haters who aren't able to do it themselves, and they're projecting. The only person you can listen to is yourself. And that's why, as an early founder, that's why you get paid the big bucks, is to figure that out.
So it sounds like you were failing at fundraising until you were oversubscribed, to put
Well,
the words.
yeah, it's actually exactly what happened. Our seed round, we tried to raise $1 million. We were like just struggling to raise anything. And all of a sudden, you know, like everybody just kept on saying no, 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 no. And my co-founders and we just said, I told them, I was like, listen, we're not going to get investor money. We can make money. Like, we take a percentage of every dollar that comes in. We just need to become profitable. Like, we just need to run a business where you actually make more money than you spend. Fascinating, fascinating. So we were like, let's just do that, and then we can exist on our own. And Darwinism, right, survival is the best thing for creativity, so we came up with all these ideas, and we started making more money, and the growth numbers went up, and eventually, see, VCs are really good at having opinions. Like, I don't know if like that person's gonna like your market, or I don't know if that's a good color, or I don't know if that's a good button, but what you can't argue with is data. So our data was like this. You know what that is, up and to the right. And then VCs were like, that's good data. I'm going to invest. And then people just pile on top of each other. So we were 5x oversubscribed. Once we started getting money, we changed the terms, and then it was off to the races.
In the beginning, you mentioned that the origin of the idea was to actually go and disrupt the financial services industry.
Yeah.
And it took 9 years for the company to become essentially a market leader in helping entrepreneurs fund the products. But now you are on the track of actually disrupting the 300-year-old industry that's heavily regulated. What was that journey, and what is your vision for actually turning product funding into equity crowdfunding, which I think is really the term here?
Yeah, I mean, access to capital, I think, is just a little bit beyond like water, food, shelter. Like, being able to access capital in a democratic way is a very empowering, like, civilization thing. And it's such a global issue. It's not an American issue, which it totally is an American issue because our loan policies and regulations are totally busted, but that's besides the point. But it's completely global. So global that Keith Raboy is one of our investors, and you know, he was at Square and all kinds of different good companies, and you know, started one of the companies that was even mentioned here. He's a VC, one of our investors, and he came to speak at Indiegogo one time, and he said something very interesting. And he said, you know, Indiegogo is the fastest growing international company I've ever seen, besides Twitter, that hasn't yet internationalized. Meaning, without doing anything with languages or anything with currency, meaning only English and only dollars, meaning terrible, terrible experiences, we were already being used in 170 countries. What that means is people are walking on fire and eating glass to try to use our experience. We just meet the customer need, right? So the market for the world to get access to capital is massive. And we believe it's a never-ending story. And we're just continuing to layer more on top of the stack in terms of being able to democratize access to capital. And that means for the entrepreneurs, really, because we believe any one entrepreneur has the opportunity to completely change the world. So if you can create access to capital, you really stack the odds in the favor of the world because you get more people to try to change the world.
Pieces are slowly sort of falling. We've got the Jobs Act passed. We got. I think it's becoming a very mainstream idea. VCs, some are getting scared because that feels like we're no longer needed in the future. You've been on sort of equity crowdfunding topic for a while. What are the early successes? What can you share about you achieved to date with that?
Yeah, so just to back up, in 1932 is the last time in America that you as a public person can invest in a company from your neighbors or from a random company. As of 1933, there's the market crash and the Securities Act in 1933 that a lot of banking and investment policy has been governed in the US for the last 90 years. And one of those rules is unless there's the SEC IPO, which originates in 1933, Facebook, you can't invest unless you're a rich person. That's kind of like saying you can't drive unless you're a rich person. But that actually is true for 90 years until we work with others to lobby Congress in 2012 and we change a law. It's called the Jobs Act. And we actually changed the law going back to 1933. But yet there's so much pushback because the king likes to stay king. So the random finance organizations pushed back for years. It was signed in 2012. It only goes live in 2016 in America that you're even allowed to now have this equity crowdfunding. What does that mean? Indiegogo perks, you give a donation, you buy a product, you don't have an equity investment, you don't get financial return. It's illegal until the Jobs Act was signed and until we went live this past year, like 6 months ago. And we're really now are literally an equity crowdfunding vehicle. People use the word invest in Indiegogo. Now anybody can invest in any company on Indiegogo and get financial return. There was just an Indiegogo campaign, I was so happy, like Blinkcam or whatever that was, that one with the eyes, that was an Indiegogo. Amazing. And we have hundreds of thousands of entrepreneurs, and now we already have 13 companies that have raised equity capital. And the incredible thing is we've had already billions of dollars of VC money that has followed our Indiegogo campaigns, and that's without equity. And now what's really fun is to see our children, our companies, being wooed by all these VCs that are coming off our platform. So I like to think of Airbnb as one of the biggest hotel companies without any rooms. Well, we're on the path to becoming the biggest bank and VC company without any money. It's true.
Very exciting. It's very exciting to see disruption of that scale actually taking place with Indiegogo and AngelList and companies sort of influencing that. What's next? What do you think will be the next big area for you where you and the company will focus?
Yeah, I mean, it's we were just kind of lucky that I mean, it's not an accident, but it's still lucky that often people work on features. They work on things that don't have a long life, that they just hope somebody will buy their company because kind of the long term, it's not such a big opportunity. Indiegogo and the financial markets is the exact opposite. We just are lucky enough that we're in the beginning stages of a revolution in the entire financial markets that's going to be completely global. So there's constantly things that we can still test and innovate and get excited about. I still wake up excited. We're now working with some of the largest Fortune 500 companies in the world because they're trying to use our techniques of innovation and quick, rapid prototyping to lower costs and increase go-to-market strategies. So we literally have like GE or Motorola or Whirlpool or other companies like that. We're moving into equity crowdfunding, which I think is going to be a massive opportunity. It'll start slow. It'll slowly hit some major inflection points, and there'll be a very steep curve. We're expanding globally quite a bit. China is one of our largest, well, it's our largest market outside of the US. It's actually very exciting, and I think we're still early stages.
All right, well, thank you. I wanted to ask one last question. I'm personally very curious to hear your answer. What are your most favorite campaigns that you've seen on the platform to date? Which ones do you like?
I love them all. For anybody who's a parent, it's hard to pick your favorite child. But we had the first ever crowdfunded baby in the world. No, I'm serious. So there was a couple in Florida that wasn't able to afford in vitro fertilization, and they had less than 1% chance of having a baby. They were only in their 20s, but yet their physical issues, the probability was virtually zero. So all the insurance companies passed on them, and then all the hospitals passed on them. Not because good or bad, they just said the probability is too low, you're not worth spending effort or time or money. So she shared her story on Twitter. I got in touch with her. She ended up doing the story on Indiegogo to raise the money. And all she wanted to do was the chance to fail. And they ended up having a kid. So that's pretty cool.
Thank you, Slava. Thank you for the very insightful and entertaining conversation.
Thank you. And I'm just,
Thank you.
In case anybody cares, I'm always responsive, so I'm literally just Slava at Indiegogo. I have no cards. You don't need to ask me anything. You can just send me an email. I will respond, I guarantee it.